So first of all, thank you, Helen and Dick, for having us here at your home tonight. It is better than having it in the tavern. It was going to be a bit noisy there, but this has worked out really well. And here's to the launch of In Search of Orphan Annie. Finally. Someone asked me a while ago how long did it take, and I didn't want to tell anyone. I've actually been on this for 30 years, you know, trying to find this woman. So, but it's in the last 2 years, and probably just about 2 years to the day that I found Orphan Annie. I'll tell you how I'm about in a moment. It's 2 years to the day from when I found her to when it went to print. So, but 3 years, and it's just this week 3 years, and Jean actually reminded me about that. She said, Jenny, look at your post on Facebook. I love Facebook for that because it actually reminds you of stuff. It came up that I'd actually found we had a convict in the family. I mean, up until then, Bob was the only one that had a convict on our family, but now we've got one on ours as well, so there we go. Who knew that a pandemic, oh my goodness, would actually be the catalyst to actually set this off and for me to sit down and spend some time and totally get into it and find where Orphan Annie come from. So it was on the 1st of March 2020, I know the date, I went back through and found the post. I was on Facebook, as you do, and I was on a convict speciality group, and I put this message up. I knew Thomas, her father, had come out as a convict, but I never knew when the mother and the children came out. There's 2 children, well, there's more, but I'm not going to tell you about that, that's in the book. When the children come out, and I was like, well, how did they get here? He came out as a convict. So back in those days, they used to be able to sponsor or organise for their families to come out, but I went through all the records, just could not find anything, absolutely nothing came up. So I put this message up on Facebook, and I said, trying to find out when Thomas's wife, Anne, you'll get to read about Anne's in the book, and Annie and Matilda, when did they come out? We knew they were in Hobart, I knew all that part of it, but didn't know how they got there. And part of being a genealogist is you've got to find out when they arrived in the country. That's one thing you have to do. So I put this message up, and this lady came back in and she said, well, what's the children's names? And I hadn't at that stage put the children up. And I said, oh, Anne and Matilda. She said, they came out on Elizabeth and Henry. That's the name of the ship. I'm like, what? You're kidding? And she come back a few minutes later, they're in the orphan school. I said, oh my God, you've got to be kidding. So we took the conversation off Facebook and went private, and then we did emails. She's in Tasmania, thank you very much. So at that stage it was March, so it was 3 hours ahead of us. So I'm trying to dish up tea, she's trying to email me from Tasmania and with all the records that she'd found. You're crying. Because Jean knows the story, and like with Jean and Sue, they're family historians. They both know what the emotion of all that means. You guys are probably going, oh, you're right, Jenny. You don't get it. Vicky will get it. You get it, don't you? Yeah. When you find something, you got it. Yeah. So it was really just absolutely amazing. But it was the pandemic that made me sit down. We weren't allowed to go out. We're not supposed to. And I just sat there and just searched and searched. This lady, her name was Marie Ring, so she'll forever ring her name in my head. She was a lady that came up to me and she found it, and yeah, that's why I went from there. But just for those that don't understand about the orphanage side of it, convicts' children, when they came out, they were put straight into an orphanage, or into the orphan school in this case. So they couldn't stay with the parents, so they were separated from them, and that's what they did. They put them into an orphanage. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment too. I don't know that Nana Cripps knew that she actually had a convict in the family. She'd always told me she didn't know too much about her family, but this is her grandmother that we're talking about, Orphan Annie. And in my author's notes, I've actually said that we don't glorify our ancestors, but how good is it as a convict? I mean, seriously. It's what we call genealogy gold, and it's convict royalty. So I think that probably actually would have been quite proud, because she's like that. And if anyone, everybody just about here would remember old Nana Cripps.
Yeah.
Do you think she was feisty?
Yes.
I think she got that from her grandmother, because when you read the story, Annie was feisty. She was feisty. So I think Nana would actually think that's a hoot to actually have a convict in the family. Yeah. There were times when I'd visit Nana and I'd have a tape recorder in my hand, you know, the old tape recorder's a big heavy thing with all the buttons on the top. And she'd see me coming and she'd go, and what do you want now? Then she'd see the tape recorder and she'd go, put the kettle on. And that's what we do. We put the kettle on and we'd sit down and we'd talk. So some of the stories that you'll read towards the end of the book, scratching through there, something going on.
I just almost fell off the easel.
You'll actually realise that the stories that I've got in there, on Nana's side of it, are actually from the tape recordings. So they're actually her words that are in there, okay? And towards the back, that is, not the front bit, because she didn't know about it. Auntie Leah was there sometimes. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't have any of the Mainwarings here tonight. I would love them to have been here, but they're off visiting, well, at weddings in Hamilton Island. They're finished now, the wedding's over, but they haven't come back yet. Auntie Leah used to be around there quite often, visiting Nana when I was there, and Nana died in 1989, and she came out to my house and gave me this box. It was like a dress box. It was so big and so deep, and it was full of letters. There was address books, birthday books, and letters. I had no idea at that stage how important those letters were going to become. I did write to the family. They were actually from New Zealand, the family in New Zealand, so I did write to them a few times, but we could not find out when Annie got out here. So between even the New Zealand people and us, we just didn't know how this all come about. Unfortunately, Wynn has now passed away, so Auntie Norma actually put me onto Wynn as well. She knew, she went and visited quite often, the family in New Zealand.
The Campbells.
Yeah, on the Campbell side.
Yeah.
So she would go and see them. Last year I came down and we had a morning tea at, I don't know where we were, somewhere. Sorry. And I shared, Auntie Rita had a look at the book. Robbie and Joanne had a bit of a preview, and both of you sort of, gave me a bit of encouragement to keep going. But that enthusiasm that day, I only read you out a couple of paragraphs. Yeah, you went, oh my God, don't you remember me reading out the paragraphs? Auntie Rita's looking. Yeah, and she was just, well, everybody else there. They all thought it was just amazing, you know, they thought, oh yeah. So that sort of gave me a bit of enthusiasm to keep going. Then last November, Bob and I, we just hopped on the plane. Not really, we had to really watch all those border controls and everything that were going on. It was, we were free as in able to go between Tasmania and WA. The borders were open. So don't read what's on Facebook, don't read the headlines of the newspapers, get onto the WA health site and know what you can do, because people told me we weren't allowed to go, and I said, yes we can. Oh, but you have to quarantine when you come back. No, we didn't. So anyway, we hopped on the plane and off we went. So we spent an amazing 5 weeks, nearly, in Tasmania, and we went to the orphanage where Annie was kept. So the photos are in the book of where she was. We went down to Port Arthur, where her father ended up. And we went to the Isle of the Dead, where he's buried. Now the funny thing about that was, when we were on the Isle of the Dead, we did the tour of Port Arthur. You get on the ferry to go across and you go around, you do a tour, you get off. We got onto the Isle of the Dead and there's this platform thing that you walk on there, so you're not actually walking on the graves and on the ground. And there was this bunch of flowers just there. And because the convicts didn't have headstones, the ordinary people in the prison, the guards and that all did. There was this bunch of flowers there, and I went, is that you, Thomas? There was no flowers anywhere else, but I spotted these flowers, and I thought, it must be him. I was getting goosebumps at that stage. The rain had stopped. It had been pelting rain that day. The rain stopped. We walked away and went around to where all the guards and that were. The rain come bucketing down. Got our umbrellas out. Bob probably doesn't really realise that I was feeling this. He was there. I was going, what's she on about? And then we go back around again to get back on the cruise ship, and you just sort of near the ferry, and you're near these flowers again, and it stopped raining. Like, Thomas, I reckon you were there. So he's buried on the Isle of the Dead. So if anyone's going to Tasmania, do go out there and have a look, and that's where he is. So that was an amazing trip. We sort of went to all the places, even did a cruise out to Maria Island, where he spent some time in his during his convict years. Yeah, so it's pretty cruel, pretty rough, but it's worth looking into. Okay, some thank yous. First of all, Peter. I gave Peter the book to read.
The first chapter.
No, I gave you the whole book.
You only read
The thing was, it wasn't long after the cyclone and there was everything going on, and you know, I thought he needed some light relief. But he was so encouraging and said, keep going, it's really good. He did get mixed up with all the Anns and the Annies and the Thomases and the Johns and the Georges, which you will too. Just, I'll let you know now, there's lots of those names that get repeated all the way through it. So I did a revision and tried to make it so that you could sort all that out. And I've added a cast of characters so that you can sort of go, well, who's she talking about there? So go back to the front and read who it is that I'm talking about, because they do change their names as well, as convicts do. Why would you keep your real name? So, you know, you've got to look into that as well. Now, a big thank you. We've got Jean over here on FaceTime. Jean is in Queensland, so unfortunately she wasn't able to make it. I would love her to have been here. You can still hear us okay, Jean?
Yeah, you do drop in and out.
Oh, right, yeah, maybe I should stand a bit closer. I'll see how that goes. Jean and I actually met, would you believe, online, as you do. We did a University of Tasmania convict course back in 2016, and Jean doesn't have any convicts. So she was, I was like, okay, that's all right, you don't have to have convicts. But I started off doing John Clinch because I knew about him at the time. Now you'll read about him in the book. He's Annie's first husband, but I won't go too much into that. And then I thought, hang on a minute, everybody in this course is doing Tasmania or New South Wales. What about our WA people? Bob's great-grandfather is a convict. So he was out at Port Gregory, out at Linton Station. So I focused then on that side of the family and didn't do any more on any of it. Well, I didn't know that Thomas and all these were convicts at that stage. So I dropped all that. So Jean sort of got in on it as well. We just seemed to click, didn't we, Jean? We just seemed to, we're in the same, what they did, they put us into groups. So you went onto a forum, and I don't know how many, probably 10 or 12 people maybe in a forum.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So then we sort of took it offline, and I've actually met Jean twice in person, so she's not just, she's not an axe murderer. And she's not a convict. She came into Geraldton on a cruise ship, so we hopped off for the day, and we took her and her husband around and had lunch together. And then when we were in Canberra, when we went over for Davey Cripps's service back in 2019, Jean was actually in Canberra at the time, so Bob and I pulled our caravan up in the same caravan park and had a night together there as well. So we've actually met each other in twice, and then other times we tend to just message each other. This is probably the first FaceTime call we've ever done.
I think so.
I think so, yeah. So that was really good. Then we go to, well, Jean, she's just absolutely amazing. You'd mention something to her and I'd say, oh, I found this. Well, while I'm still trying to get it in my head, she's off looking for it, going, oh, I found this, I've got this, here, have a look at this, have a look at this. I'm trying to read all this stuff and it's all just going, it was just absolutely amazing. So when you read the book, Jean found the story about the boy being poisoned. In the newspaper it said it was a girl, so that threw us off the scent a little bit, but we did find out who that was, so I won't give way too much more on that one. And also the second crime which sent Thomas to Port Arthur, which caused him to be down there and died down there. So thanks to Jean that story came about as well. Yeah, so that's really good. Jean also got me to do show, not tell. So when you're writing a family history, it can be quite boring. Nobody else is interested in it because it's all dates and facts and he died, she died, he married, she married, you know, whatever. It's pretty boring. But hopefully we've turned this into, we've showing you the story, and Jean was sort of instrumental in that and helping me to sort of bring that through. Sue, you were absolutely amazing too. I decided to send the book through to Sue, Sue being a school teacher, a teacher from your past. We actually grew up together. Sue went to the state school, I went to the convent for a couple of years in Northampton. We played netball together. Sue was a Hazelby from Northampton, so we kind of knew who we were. Sue, we're not related. We're not related. She's also written a few books of her own about Northampton history. There's a couple out there, so they're really good to read. If anyone wants to, she probably should have what's on? Anyway, so Sue had a bit of a read, and thank goodness, because I was getting my tenses mixed up. I kept doing past and present pretty well in the same sentence. And I just, you know, you're in the zone, you're actually in the story, so you couldn't separate yourself from it. So Sue actually went through that and pulled a lot of that out. But she says, Jenny, have you seen this? I've been through the New Zealand newspapers. I've been looking up, because our great-grandmother on Nana's mother, Nana Cripps's mother, is Zenobia, okay? She said, I've only ever looked really for Zenobia, and it's great. Those girls having those unusual names, Katura and Jessie Hypatia, oh my God, you know, they've just made it so much easier to find these people. But I hadn't found what Sue found. She put in one of the other brothers, Augustus, I think it was, you said, and she found this record. I'm not going to tell you any more, but when you read 2 chapters extra that came into it on the Kimberley story, that was all thanks to Sue. It was just absolutely amazing, and a shipwreck to go with it.
Yes. And I don't know how many meals you got in that 2 weeks.
So that story came out written to be really amazing. But a week out from this thing going to print, there was something else that was niggling me that I wanted to find out, and I couldn't. So I had another look. I shared it with both Sue and Jean, and there's in chapter 5 that is at the beginning. It's been added in as well, because we've only just found this story out. I'm not going to tell you about it, you just have to wait. It's called The Night in Question. So when you read that bit, you'll understand that that story had to go in. It was really important. And I better thank Bob. What did he do? He would walk into my office when I was in the zone, and he'd ask me, "Oh, can you come and help me with this?" No, but he's actually been quite patient with me. But the beauty of it is, Bob actually loves computers too, so we didn't feel guilty. We've got a room each, which kids have always said to us, "Hey, why don't you join the same room together?" I went, no. I need to be in the zone. As for the kids, Helen, Melissa, I had Peter in there as well, but he doesn't really know what's going on. These two sort of knew that I was doing something and offered to sort of do a read, but it was school holidays, they were busy. And I ain't got time for you to read it. They were on to do a bit of editing for me, but anyway, Helen gave me one little tip that we picked up on, so that was all right. And Melissa would you started having a read up there on the school holidays, and then I said, "Oh, I've changed that, I've fixed that." So that was the end of that. So anyway, and Harley, my grandson. I said to Melissa, "Do you think you could ask Harley if he'd like to come along tonight?" He's actually given up his basketball to be here with his group. So thank you, Harley. That was really, really good. I've actually tried to digitise everything. Trying to, because I reckon this lot will throw everything out when I'm gone. Over the years, as we know, we accumulate certificates, and they don't cost a pretty penny, do they? No. So I've kept all the originals, but I've tried to digitise a lot of stuff, but I can't throw a lot out either. So Harley, guess what? You might end up with all the family history. But I guess at the end of the day, when you're gone, you're gone. If they throw it out, they burn it, and they want to do it, they start again. That's all there is to it. Mind you, it's easier now. 30 years ago, it wasn't so easy. So In Search of Orphan Annie is not just a short story, it's a novel. It's over 40,000 words, so it constitutes a novel, so I've been told. But there's lots of twists and turns in it, so just be prepared to it's a page turner, I think. Keep turning the pages. I won't give any more away. I'm going to say that errors and omissions are accepted or expected. Anyone finds an apostrophe out of place, I don't want to know about it. Jean knows about that one. I keep putting these apostrophes in the wrong place. And my grammar sucks. I only ever been through school 30, 40, 50 years ago, for goodness sake, things have changed. So anyway, but the facts are true, okay? We've built it on facts. So I'm just going to ask Jean. Jean wanted to say a few words, so hopefully you can hear her. She's going to speak through there now, through the Bluetooth. So over to you, Jean.
Oh, wow. What do I say after that? I just want
on producing such a
Just
great
come a bit closer to your phone. Yep.
I just want to congratulate you on producing such a great book. Not only have you told a great story, bringing Annie and her family to life, you've made this book from start to finish, not just the research and the writing. You have typed it up and laid it out very professionally. Not everyone can do that. And I know how much work you have put into this, not to mention the amount of time that you spent on it. But the end product is a beautiful book, and that I'm really excited to hold in my hand. It's testament to all that effort and dedication. So well done, Jenny. And to everyone else there, who's there, to celebrate two amazing women, Jenny and Annie, thank you for appreciating and acknowledging her. What's happened?
Just turning you around.
For appreciating and acknowledging Jenny's book. Often the work that people like Jenny and I do never sees the light of day because no one is interested. You have shown that you are interested. And when Jenny said that she was ordering 85 books, I just went, wow, 85 books. I don't even think I know 85 books. But that means that at least 85 people are going to learn about Annie and what her life was like. And I need to. So well done, Jenny. I know Annie would be very proud of you, her great-great-granddaughter. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Right.
2 times great. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think she'd be proud of everybody that's here as well, all the ladies.
I know that I'm going to miss Annie. I've come to know her quite well.
I'm sure she'll keep coming back.
And I just want to tell Harley, you've got a cool man.
Thank you, Jane.
So, well done. I've already read it.
Yeah, several times.
No,
All right, thank you so much. That's really good. Thank you. And Sue's going to say a few words as well.
Okay, so you've heard how I've come into the story, how I got to come in and help Jenny with the proofreading and a little bit of editing, and my school teacher read biro across the tenses and the apostrophes. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to step into Annie's shoes and lightheartedly make you realise that those matriarchal genes are all part of you. And she was very much like most of these women in this room. She was born of loving parents in Ireland, so she's a Paddy. Father takes her on a holiday like some fathers do, except it was to the penitentiary. The mother thought, well, I could do better than that. I'll take her on an overseas holiday on a prison ship. But when she gets to Hobart, she goes to boarding school, an orphanage. Most of us have been, a lot of us have been in boarding school. But she comes back and she's welcomed back into the family. She finds love, she gets married. Her husband is a FIFO worker. He goes off to Victoria on a rotation for 5 years. Oh. Somewhere along the line, there's a couple of immaculate conceptions in there as well. But finally, he decides that he'll have to write to her. God, I wish we had those letters. Jenny and I decided that we reckon it said, "Dear Annie, I've stuffed up. Can you meet me in Melbourne at the Crown? We'll have a weekend of loving and put it all back together. Love, John. P.S. If you've been unfaithful, forget all that." You've definitely forgotten all that. Along comes tall, dark and handsome, next man in her life. Probably the love of her life. He can do even better. Take her to New Zealand. She has a pretty good life in New Zealand with old Neil, or young Neil as he would have been then. And that was all fine, but about this part in the story, I'm thinking, oh, come on, how did she get to Australia, to Western Australia? Jenny, there's a whole gap. She's been in New Zealand, she's come to Australia and she's dead. That's it. What's happened in the middle? Oh, well, off I go, and I started researching. get on to Jenny quick smart. Jenny, I know how they came to Australia. I know how they came to Western Australia. She came in a rush. But I reckon if you're going to go to the Kimberley, Annie, you should have gone 150 years fast forward and got in the caravan with you too. The way she did it, that's for sure, absolutely. So she's no different than interviewed ladies here, all of you descendants, but those genes have come right through well and truly. And Jenny, you did a great job. The story is amazing, and it just it ebbs and flows, and just when you think you've got a story right, suddenly something different's happening in it. She's an amazing woman, and I'm sure that if she was here, and she is somewhere up there, I reckon she'd be mighty proud.
That's great. Now, Peter, let's do the actual launch.
Oh, well, before I do that, I'm going to go back and try and cast ourselves back and place ourselves in the era of the 19th century. And during the 19th century, London was transformed into the world's largest city. The population in 1801 was 1 million people. By 1891, the population had expanded to over 5.5 million, 5.567 to be more precise. A large Irish population settled in the city, with many of them refugees from the Great Famine. At one point, Irish immigrants made up about 20% of London's population. At the beginning of the 19th century, the urban core of London was contained to the west, and a lot of you have probably been to London and know the suburbia layout, but anyway, contained to the west by Park Lane and Hyde Park, by Marylebone Road to the north, along the south bank of the Thames at Southwark, and to the east as far as Bethnal Green and Spitalfields. Where was Annie? Shoreditch, that's it. That's it. Okay. Bethnal Green, click, great granddad was born in Bethnal Green.
On the Crip side. So there's a bit of crossover happening.
Anyway, just to make it sound a bit more interesting, the city encompassed 122 square miles in 1851 and had grown to 693 square miles by 1896. So within 45 years, just the expansion rate of London was phenomenal. And what was going on at that time, and the supply of food and waters and whatever, it's boggles the mind. During the period, London became a global political, financial and trading capital. While the city grew wealthy as Britain's holdings expanded, 19th century London was also a city of poverty, where millions lived in overcrowded and unsanitary slums, which was immortalised by Charles Dickens in such novels as Oliver Twist. London's great expansion was driven by housing growth to accommodate the rapidly expanding population. Suburbs varied enormously in character and in the relative wealth of their inhabitants, with some for the very wealthy and others being for the lower middle classes. Terraced, semi-detached and detached housing all developed in a multitude of styles and topologies. The author George W.M. Reynolds commented on the vast wealth and misery of London's poorest in 1844. The most unbounded wealth is the neighbour of the most hideous poverty. The crumbs which fall from the tables of the rich would appeal delicious viands to the starving millions, and yet these millions obtain them not. In that city there are in all 5 prominent buildings: the church, in which the pious pray; the gin palace, to which the wretched poor resort to drown their sorrows; the pawnbrokers, where miserable creatures pledge their raiment, and their children's raiment, even unto the last rag, to obtain the means of purchasing food, and alas, too often, intoxicating drink. The prison, where the victims of a vitiated condition of society expiate the crimes to which they have been driven by starvation and despair; and the workhouse, to which the destitute, the aged, and the friendless hasten to lay down their aching heads and die. Interesting, one of the suburbs of London, St Giles, the single most notorious slum which had passed into common parlance as a byword for extreme poverty. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of St Giles being referred to as the
Not nowadays.
urine dye in the pit, so to speak. In Bethnal Green, one of London's poorest districts, where great-granddad Cripps came from. The mortality rate stood at 1 in 41 in 1847. Huge death rates in London. Fantastic. And anyway, on that, read the book, you'll learn more, and hence officially launched Orphan Annie. Oh, okay.
Oh, he's giving away all the secrets.
Do we tell?
Well, I reckon it's counterfeit.
That, do we tell?
Well,
Do
you
tell.
can, just in saying that, I just wanted one bit I forget to say was that when, as I said about not glorifying our ancestors, they just did what they did to survive the times.
Which is why I live.
And we're doing what we're doing today, so we're surviving. So it's just a different time. It was 1845, 48 was when all this would come about. So this is what happens, and we do things to survive. But that's why Peter's read all that, that part of it out to put you in the picture of that time in their life as to where it all happened. But go on, you want to say that?
Anyway, but Orphan Annie and her father, they came to grief with the constabulary or the law system, and hence they got transported as convicts. Prior to that, women who were caught counterfeiting coin, and what was the other word for it? Counterfeiting, but that was embezzlement. That wasn't the word.
No, it's like laundering.
And anyway, they got beheaded. So Orphan Annie, fortunately, was born some 20, 30, 40 years later from when that last beheading took place. So she was. They were very fortunate in that they survived and got transported to Tasmania, if you call it fortunate.
Well, we're here.
Well,
So we've come from that.
counterfeiting was their crime,
Yep.
and hence the coins.
And we'll just watch that you don't pinch any on.
I'm sure you'll go far with it.
Anyway, sorry. I think it's the right one. Sure. Yep. All right. So I want to present this one to Harley for coming here tonight. You can put the video down there if you like. Harley is our grandson that came along tonight, and I wanted to make sure he had one of the first books. So I do have all the books over here, so whoever wanted them, they're here. I've got none left.
And Mum's going to sign them all for anyone that's here
Oh,
tonight.
yeah, me too. I can sign them for sure. So anyway, we'll
Adjourn for lunch. And of course,
Ben, not that she wants a photo of you and I with the book. Oh, I'm standing next to you. You can't see me, but I'm there. Squish it, squish it. We can't pick over this way.
Don't you have a glass in your hand? Let's raise it to Annie.